I'm not going to talk about them at all. I'm going to introduce Mr. Dermot Gizzy Ling from Newstalk to do all that. So we have a big St. Peregrine's welcome, please, for Dermot Ling.
Thanks, John. Before I start, I'll just introduce the lads who will come up on stage. You're the ones going to be asking questions. If there's any little lulls, which I doubt there is, given the cast that we have in front of us, I'll fill it in at that stage. But I'm not even a little bit, totally intimidated by the crowd that are going to be behind me. So, without further ado, I'll introduce each of them, starting with Paudie Butler. Gavin. He has it in absolute spades, and it's because of that. And obviously, everyone has put a massive effort into today, but it is driven, and it's been driven really well. And John, thanks very much for that. I was lucky enough to play with Wexford for about 8 or 9 years on the upslope of beating Dublin for a little while, a couple of draws in the middle, and then the downslope being beaten by the Dubs for a little while. And as much as I enjoyed absolutely tearing into that for probably the majority of my 20s, I went away from it for a year at about 29 and had a chance to look back in at it. When you're in the middle of it, it's like this tunnel vision, and I went away and was able to look back in and see actually that the kind of win at all costs, totally driven, very selfish view that I had of who I was and what it was that I was doing was actually really destructive for me as a person. And I began to kind of look and see how, as a school teacher, how you can bring that what you've learned from looking back in and help develop kids and coaches to develop kids in the same way. At the same time, the GA has gone on an amazing journey, a very similar journey with the likes of the Go Games, which stand for an awful lot more than just getting the best hurlers on the field all the time. And it's a great thing. It's a great thing that the GA has gone that way, but even more importantly, that these guys behind us are, for me, evangelists of a similar kind of mentality, and something that's to be welcomed and challenged and thrown at them and questioned them and tear it apart as much as we can to build up a better understanding, because really, that's probably the best place to do it. Other than that, pleasure to be here, delighted, we'll tear into it, take as many questions, as open the questions. As I say to the 10-year-olds in my class, there's no such thing as a stupid question. We will probably laugh if you do ask a stupid question. That's okay too. I'd expect Anthony Daly to be taking apart one or two fellas on that. But yeah, we'll open to the floor, and I think first of all, we'll call on a few. If we can, just keep in mind, I think Anthony may have to leave a little bit early, so if there's any hurling questions, don't wait till Anthony's gone out the door to ask him. We'll try and get those early enough at some stage. And also, the lads are very much here as club people, as people who are just the very same as all of us. Club people first, and are totally invested in their games and have got up to a very high level. But more so than anything, are here on a similar level. So those questions are questions that are open. They're open to be discussed. If somebody wants to take a point somebody's made, put up your hand. We go to you and we can develop the point a little bit further. It's conversation as much as question and answers, lads. These are things to be dissected. We're going to learn them by dissecting them and take them apart. So feel free to do so. Focusing on, I think, more so on coaching, juvenile coaching, before, in case, be very inclined to get into the lads' experience at the top level, because we're all very interested in what it is, the top level that drives people. But if we can focus on, and I know it's part of their focus too, what inspires coaches to coach kids to be the best that they can be off the field and on the field. And I think with that in mind, it's probably a good start. So if there's any questions, anything that's jumping out at the start, I can get started otherwise, but I'd love to hear from everyone. Okay?
How you doing?
If you want to take them, there's a mic behind you.
Thanks very much, for all this. My question is for Jim. Just your mannerisms on the sideline. You really are somebody that I admire. Your technique, your calmness, and it seems to bounce out on everybody else. Is that a technique that you have learned over the last few years, or just a natural thing that you have? Because I find ourselves when we can be on the sideline with the younger guys, we can be very animated, and it's something I'd like to be able to maybe learn from the best.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, and on my right here is Sean Boylan, so having played against me for so many years and observed Sean on the sideline, he was very similar, I think, in his mannerisms, and to go back to Kevin Heffernan and even Pat O'Neill, where I would have played it as well. So any of the coaches that have influenced me, or any of the opposition managers that I would have witnessed, and the good ones, they would be that way inclined. But it's really just it's a preference. Some managers need to be, I suppose, animated to keep themselves within that bubble, so you can concentrate on the game. So that's just my particular style, and probably the philosophy that I would have for players. It's probably from a coaching perspective, is that I would say that yesterday's players took orders, today's players make decisions. So what I'm trying to do as a coach or as a manager is empower the players to make decisions in the field of play. Now, I would have watched some of the drills that John, or exercises that John did with you guys down in the hall, and our training will be very structured along similar lines. So we give the players a structure to play with them, but I suppose we would call it controlled freedom. So within that structure and within that game plan, each player would know exactly what's expected of him. You give him KPIs, you give him the game plan, and he knows what he has to do. But within that, you want him to be the best he can. And that was mentioned a few moments ago. And for him to make the right decisions, he needs to feel comfortable within his own skin that it's okay to try things out. And one of the things that we would say in the Dublin football setup is that it's okay to make mistakes, because I would see it from my experience that for players to grow, they have to make mistakes. Like there's a paradox between achieving excellence is one thing, but and players will probably never get there. Perfection is impossible. Excellence is out there, but to this paradox, to get to excellence, you have to try and get the players to express themselves, to make mistakes, to learn, and to grow. And that excellence keeps moving up as they grow. So it's and for me, it's my own style that for the players to feel comfortable with me, know that I'm not going to badge them for making a mistake. That's just the approach we take. Notwithstanding, there are certain standards, and if they know that if they don't bring up to them, they can't decide they're gone, and it's the next man up. So that's my take on it, and I feel that the players do respond to it well, and I use that in 21s as well, and I think the modern player. I've 20 years of a certain ability for 20 years, so I know the disciplined approach, and we are very disciplined with them. But for for them to be the best they can be, as Maslow say, for them to self-actualise, I think you have to give them that confidence, that self-esteem to try things out.
If I could bring Paudie in on that for 1 second. Paudie, we had George O'Connor on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he made a point, and was talking to John about it, who's obviously a good friend of yours. And a similar point that Jim is making, he explained a point that I think was possibly lost by a lot of people, that he would give back his All-Ireland medal almost in search of mastering the skills and giving more time to mastering the skills. Maybe not to that extent of giving back the All-Ireland medal that he played for 21 years for, but I mean, he has a regret that he didn't master the skills ahead of just winning.
Well, thanks to everybody today, and thanks to Dermot. I went down to give Wexford a hand, and Dermot ran out the door when he saw me coming.
I haven't gone back yet.
I don't think I should answer that question now. So Dermot, it's good to be here. And that was a phenomenal interview. That News Talk interview Saturday week had a profound effect on a massive audience. And George was talking about values within himself. And to make an impression on the story, he said, it is much more important for us as human beings to get on top of something, to master something, than anything else. Because, as Jim knows, there are great footballers in every county. There are many players in Dublin get All-Ireland medals this year who never kicked the ball. And some people say they're great players. Whereas another team that lost by a point, they get no medal. And we know as full human beings that both of them are equally valuable in our eyes. One isn't better because they get a medal. And for players who really, in every sport in the world, and in professional sport, when people have a certain amount of money win, it doesn't matter. It's mastery that really drives them from there on. And our own Paudie is a good example of that. So for George, who wanted to make a point to all the underage coaches in the country, to value what we're about. We were founded, the GA was founded by Michael Cusick principally to restore the self-esteem of the Irish nation, to regain respect for our own culture. He has succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. So George is putting that story into his own context. That it's about mastery, it's about excellence, and if a medal comes along, that's okay, and if it doesn't come along, it's okay too. And it must be that way, because most counties are not going to win the All-Ireland, and most people are not going to win the All-Ireland. I'd say about 1/20th of 1% will win the All-Ireland medal. Is everybody else a failure in our eyes? Of course they're not. I look up to great players who played. Imagine Anthony looking back on all the Clare players that played before him. Does Anthony feel superior to the lads that never won? The lads that played for 10 years, 15 years and never won? Of course he doesn't. The medal is nice, but the mastery of your position, or the mastery of your game, or the mastery of the ball, or the hurley of the football. Mick O'Connell took more pride in outfielding his opponent than he did about getting his medal. So there's a big story in there for us all, because most people won't win. I was telling a story last night after the War II course. The wolves, when they go hunting in the winter, okay, they're great, great predator animals, and they go hunting every day. The leader of the pack must take them out every day. Their success rate, the rate of kill per hunt is 5%. That keeps them together, keeps them healthy, keeps them fed, keeps them sharp, and keeps the team right. And if you examine any team in the country, if they win 5%, that's a well-off country. Most people, their winning is low. So winning, winning is going to be for the few. Everybody tries to win and all that, but we don't look down on anybody that doesn't win. Tipperary and Cork and Kilkenny kind of did terrible damage to hurling by dominating hurling for too long. They did terrible damage to the game. The Clare boys will understand that, right? They did terrible damage, not because they didn't like excellence, but because they stayed at the top too long. It's important that the thing goes round, and every child and every player in the world must feel that they have a chance of success. Come back to the failure thing that we talked about today so often. Michael Jordan is on record as saying that with time up, and he had the throw to win the game, he missed 1,000 throws in his career. Michael Jordan, the greatest sportsman of all time. Okay, so missing and failure is part of the business. People miss frees, people miss penalties, people miss everything, and life goes on. So be careful with the little ones. They can only learn by failing, and that's how they learn. So they fall, and they're little toddlers, they fall and they get up, and they fall and they get up, and they fall and they get up, and they fall and eventually they learn to walk. That's the nature of it. So us adults sometimes, we just get run away with ourselves. My model now is, it's about mastery. If you want to beat your neighbours, you're on the wrong track. It's about mastery. Mastery will give you whatever you have. That'll come out of you. And Dermot, we're still talking, I suppose.
Just about. Is there, guys, you're on the ground on this, you're the ones coaching kids and bringing kids up in this environment where maybe they're not getting that same message in other areas of life. Is there anything that you experience as coaches that tears that open a little bit more that you want to ask the lads about, or you know, maybe that's too idealistic. Maybe all kids want to go out and win games. Like, is there anything on it that you want to ask the lads about that kind of opens that up a little bit more? Or do you want to just move on to a different point? Yeah.
I was having a conversation there with Paudie. I look after an under 19 and they're always getting positive reinforcement from myself, and it's all about fun and enjoyment, and that's the thread throughout my training sessions. However, there seems to be an inbuilt competitiveness in an 8-year-old child. They'll go out and they'll knock each other out. And I'm really, I don't know where it's coming from. Be a taxi for you, Sean. You know, I really don't know where they pick this up from, because, you know, we're all about fun, mastery of the skills. Yet when we're involved in our mini games, they're hitting each other. You know, there's a streak of competitiveness. I don't know whether that's a good thing. Should it be left in at that age group, or if it is there and it shouldn't be there, how do we clean it out as such?
Mine seemed like under 9s, but under 29 was.
Yeah, Paudie, I think Paudie as a kids coach, if you could tear into that.
Yeah. Well, you see, they're not blank slates. They're affected by the criticism they see on television. Some of our own criticism are too severe. In professional sport, they can take it, the boy's getting his wage, he can take the criticism. But in our amateur games, the criticism on after some of the games is way over the top. And kids are watching that, and they think that's the way it is now. So they're affected by more than you, and you know, they're affected. And before there was television, children wouldn't hear criticism of anybody. In their own houses, they wouldn't be allowed to criticize. But criticism now seems to be the order of the day, doesn't it? It's coming at them every day, all day. If you're listening to the radio for the last week, you would be very depressed today. You have to distract yourself and go into the children's world where it's happy and good. And children are competitive. It's only competitive for when it's on. They're able to let it go the minute the match is over, we're not. That's the big difference.
Just on that there, Mike, sorry John. I would have thought that has changed a bit on the positive side now, from my own ladies going to school there now, and we're back in West Clare there, so it's all big ball there, Jim. But, do you know, like in my day, like if John Henley hit you a clipper in the primary school in Clarecastle, you wouldn't go home and say it, or you get another one. You know, like that day is gone now, isn't it? Like, absolutely, thank God. So I think they get a lot of positives. I notice my girls are fortunate, well, the 2 of them are gone from it now, they're in secondary, but one's still in a little 2-teacher school with 20 kids now. I know they're on the way out of those schools, unfortunately. But like 2 of the best lady teachers, incredible. The positivity coming home, I couldn't say enough good about them, you know. But I don't know about your under 9s killing each other. I suppose it is down to Sky Sports and the Sunday game. Yeah, Joe Raleigh.
Just to answer you, competitiveness is the enemy of complacency, and it's natural. We're all born with it, right from the wild animals. But if you watch Mommy in the Wild, the 2 land cubs are playing, and one of them gets rough. Mommy will come over and gentle tap, don't be rough. Because as Paudie said earlier, they all live in the game. The danger is, competitiveness must be encouraged. One of the best gyms players I know last year, and Anthony, that's why Dublin won so much. A lot of the competition that should be encouraged is the competition with yourself. The phrase, to be the best you be, is a competitive statement. You're better than you were. The danger comes from the adult and the other people who introduce the concept of winning. Now, you take the under 9s. There's a tournament in Dublin here for the under 9 championship. And there's 16 teams in it. The winner is the only one who comes to the presentation night. Even though all the other teams were positioning as leaders, because it's drummed into them by adults, not the children. Now, at that presentation night, You think of a child of 9, there's 3 tables. One with toys, one with medals, one with a cup. And Jimmy or Jill had asked up as Gavin, 8-year-old, come on, pick your prize and go for the toy. And they'll go back to the table, lift the medal, straight to Mummy and Daddy, you want that for the Gavin. And then lastly, they go to the coach with the cup, you need that for the pub. And the coach takes all the glory. And the children are out playing again with each other, no rancour, want to play. And to put them in a field, you think of it, you've all seen it, and I was laughing to this one man, it goes through there himself. Bits of grass, 2 coats for goals. Children, if there's 10 and if there's 20, divide themselves into 4 5s. The good ones and others are good. They play a game. Somebody will win, move on, then never once throw up into each other. As soon as the adult arrives, there's your danger.
There was talk of that last week at the coaching convention in Croke Park, and one of the speakers used the example of the YouTube video that I'm sure you all saw, the 2 kids in Parnell Park, and fighting for the ball, and that was competition. It's perfectly natural for them to compete for the ball and to want the ball and to push each other over to get the ball. The fact that there was no structure of when they got the ball that they were given a prize of some sort or some forced competition by adults in, I think, was the main point. The competition is absolutely natural, but forced competition by more ego-driven needs outside of the game, I think, is probably one of the biggest points. We're moving on. Any other questions? Sorry, Sean.
You forgot to take into account that they were both nephews of Sheriff Brennan's, weren't they?
Similar style, I
From the very start on the bottom.
We brought Sean just to abuse Dublin people.
Rory Dooley from Castlelock hurling. Just want to thank Peregrines for a fantastic day here. Absolutely brilliant. Great come down to the neighbours. It's fantastic. I want to ask Daly a question. Well, I want to ask him about 500, but I've managed to get it down to 1, so that's pretty good. Just say thanks, number 1. I never thought I'd say one of the best days I had out ever was in Portlaoise, but listen, thanks for that, and the lads who work very hard behind the scenes. I just wonder, do you have a standout moment from your Dublin experience so far that stands out in your head?
The night in Portlaoise was very sweet, alright. The Leinster final was, to me, probably more sweet. I know we're not winning up here at all now. None of us are winning, but... Oh, Jesus. When I saw Jimmy Gray giving the cup to Johnny McCaffrey, I'll tell you. I was saying, we must be doing something right eventually, but... funny enough, one of the standout ones was, for me, was the second year. I was up, it was 2-10, but like, and we met Kilkenny on a Sunday anyway, Leinster semi-final, and what was it, the Leinster final? I'm not certain now, but they gave us an off bit anyway, as they could do at the time, and did to most teams, I suppose, in their turn. But I remember we were as low, literally, as a snake's belly now. We were that low. We just thought, this is going nowhere. Like, you're not going to be able to beat these boys at all. Like, at any stage, it didn't look. But on the Wednesday night, we were involved with the under-21s as well. Richie Statham was the manager, and I was a selector with him. It was basically the same, but we just jiggied around, and we John McAvoy with us as well, who was very good. And we had to play Kilkenny at Nolan Park. No, it would have been Liam Rush, Peter Kelly, Martin Quilty, David Tracy, you know. But Rory O'Carroll was fighting with Pat at the time about Rory, trying to get Rory to play under-21 hurling, and Pat let him off for the night in Nolan Park. I think Pat knew what it meant to everybody, no more so than Rory, you know, the competitor he is, like a real sound fella, as Jim could testify. And we went down and beat him by 7 points down in Nolan Park, like, and to me that night made a statement about these young guys that they, okay, we're still not really seniors, because once you're under 21 you probably feel, you know, I've still loads of time ahead of me. But they knew how low we were. We'd had a senior meeting on the Tuesday, and the key guys in that under 21 team were at the meeting, listening to the tales of woe, listening to the whinging and the whining, and we had to pick it up for the qualifiers. And yet those 6 or 7 on Wednesday night went down and defied Kilkenny in None Park, none more so than Rory. Like he was exceptional, and I think Walter Watch was centre forward. They were removing him after 10 minutes. The man had him killed. But you know, I think that night was a crucial night. I remember we went back to Langton's for a bit of food, and Michael Walsh, Paudie Walsh's son, was the manager, and he came over and said, "My God, where did you get this fella? Where did you get that fella?" And I remember saying to Richie, you know, we might be onto something here. We stick with it, and that was one of the nights that stands out for me. Not even at senior level, but I still go for Jimmy Gray giving the cup to Johnny.
We don't want this to turn into a dual question debate either about players going from football to hurling or anything else. So we'll have Cormac Costello or Kieran Kenny mention the real war. Any other questions, guys?
So just on that point, is the days of Joe Stark dead?
Sean, you want to answer that?
I didn't realise you wanted to talk about my playing career. First time we played Antrim up in Lochgiel, Meath are leading Antrim by 12 points at half time, and inside the 5 minutes of the second half, Meath are behind. Next match was against Kilkenny, Croke Park, the bet is 33 points. You feel great coming off the field when one of your teammates says to you, "Jeez, we weren't so bad." And this was 1961, lads, so I'll tell you, it's a long time ago. Kilkenny have improved an awful lot since, and we haven't. So maybe we were better off to stick to the football, you know what I mean? But as kids growing up, it's terribly important that they're allowed to express themselves. The one thing that I would have found, and I remember in 1996, the year that Wexford won the All-Ireland, a lot of those Wexford players were great footballers as well. And a lot of our lads, there was 8 of the lads who would have played for Meath's senior hurling team as well. And what will I say about it? What harm did it do? I'll tell you what it did do. It kept the lads really, really fresh. It meant that, yes, they did the training with me, they played hurling matches with their club, and they played football with their own clubs and with ourselves as well. But the thing for the hurling was that it gave them, their anticipation was really quick, their hands were very fast, they could get their hands in very quickly. And in a strange sort of way, the skills from the hurling really, really helped the footballers. I just think that the task on people who are looking after underage kids is an enormous task. And quite rightly, at the very start, Jim said the tenor here when he talked about the way he was on the line and the things that influenced him. And the things that have to influence you are, if somebody is dealing with you and they're training with you or they're coaching you or whatever, and there's a little word here and a little word there that can help you to become a better person. Because in life, the most important thing that you can learn to do is to trust yourself. And if you can trust yourself, then you'll have no difficulty with others. And when you're dealing with players, and particularly, there's lots of people who want to play, but not lots of people want to compete. But even the people who don't want to compete, who want to play, to be able to do something that can give them that bit more confidence, to have a go, to do something different. Not to be afraid, as the lads were saying earlier, if something goes wrong, if they make a mistake. But the next time you'll get it right. And like if you want to take, and not because Anthony's here, not because Jim is here, but the excitement that was around this year was absolutely enormous. But it wasn't just to do with the fact that Kilkenny were beaten or that Dublin won the All-Ireland. It was the way the lads played. And I remember on the day, and I hate bringing this one up, but it was the day that Cork played yourselves in Croke Park. And Meath were playing Kerry in an under-17 match that day down in Limerick. It was supposed to start at 12 o'clock and it started at 1:45, so that ruled us out getting the first half of the match anyhow. But on the way up, there were 3 lads with me who had never taken a hurley in their hand. There wasn't a word said. teams were level 15 times in a half. That's 30 scores. Like, that's an enormous thing to happen. And those lads, this is the gas part about it was. And here they were, potential Meath minors this year, which they are. The 3 lads were out hurling that evening. And it's fantastic to see it, because everybody and every child, and you talk about Michael Jordan, every fella, it was years ago when the Tour de France was on, we were all on the bikes. Or if it was the soccer, you were having a go at that as well. But there was something brought you back to these Gaelic games. And I think it is the fact that, by our very nature, we're hard to structure. And that's what makes it probably difficult in coaching, because there's maybe it's a little bit of madness that's in us. And you don't want to lose all of that, because the flair that can come out, that never say die. Maybe it's because the nation was suppressed for a long time, but it's that thing of being able to express yourself in a really meaningful way. And it's a powerful thing to be able to do. And it's amazing. I remember when Meath were fortunate back in '87 when they won All-Ireland. I was in New York some weeks later, and I walked into a restaurant, and there were 600 people there from the county, and there were 6 lads from my own village. Not one of them had a visa. They were looking to have a passport. They were all looking over their shoulder, but they were looking for things like the Meath Chronicle or the Meath Weekend, where the equivalent of it was the Drogheda Independent at the time, or the Dunboyne News. Just something to do with the games at home or what was happening at home. And it made me, I had to go away to realise how much it meant to the people who couldn't do it. Now, why I'm telling you that is because I was in Stackallan early on in the year, and they were celebrating a Red Kenny team that had won 2 juvenile competitions in 1963 and in 1964. They were beaten in 1962. There were 4 people missing. That's all. And those poor men, 4 of them got who were dead. But everybody else was there, and they were talking about those matches, the very same those men were, as if it was last week. And why I tell you that is because Paudie will bear me out on this. It was only 10 years earlier that underage, juvenile hurling and football was introduced in this country. And you see the way it's gone to today, and the excellence that is there, and the example that's been given by the lads who are coaching the county teams today. But the bread and butter things are the people on the ground who are looking after these people. I went out on the day before the All-Ireland hurling final. I was out in Fontenoy at 8:30 in the morning, and I was over in Rathgar after that. Then I was up on top of Merrion Hill. There was another 15 inter-county hurling competition on. I was in Dunshaughlin for 11:15, and there were lads under 14s, 15s and 16s who hadn't made the cut with county development squads, and they were being coached because you're not, listen lads, you'll be there for next year. I went to Summerhill then, and Meath under 14s were playing Kildare in 2 matches. And to see hundreds of kids out there playing, and the hundreds of people voluntarily giving their time, trying to help the lads, express themselves and say it with a hurley stick or with a football, and to be able to, put the ball in the back of the net or make a great block or a great save, and that word of encouragement the whole way along the line. I never heard a cross word in those places. And I went home at 2:30 that day saying, gee, this association, it's far more than just playing the games, but the people who are involved and who are coaching them. Yes, you have a huge responsibility, but the responsibility is never have a child going home feeling small, that they shouldn't have, that they've done, always the good word, the kind word. It makes all the difference in the world. I'd have to tell you, over the years, maybe it was from having played hurling for Meath for 20 or 21 years. I won 2 National League Division 2. 3 times I got picked for Meath footballers, but I was mad into hurling. So we asked at the very start, I wanted to play hurling, that's what I wanted to play. And missed a trip to Australia in '68 because I was going to miss 2 National League hurling matches for Meath. God forgive me, I used my father as an excuse, because my father was elderly. I didn't want to leave my mother looking after him. Now my father was 88 at the time, but really, and he laughed because he said, you don't want to miss those 2 matches. He knew. And it was right, and kids will go, and they go eventually for what they want to play. Don't make it too hard and fast at under 8, 9s, 10s, 11s, 14s, 15s and so on. They will make the decisions themselves. But lads, have the doors open for them when they want to come back. Always make them feel welcome. I think that's desperately important. That was a long answer, Dermot.
Now you know why you can't play hurling football in the same year. Okay, any other questions, guys?
Just like to say hello and thanks very much to everybody at the table there. Thanks very much for giving up your time to come to us here today. My question's for Anthony Daly. Anthony, you've watched the video on YouTube quite a few times. It's titled Up in the Tempo, and you're given, I think it's 2009, and there's a hand passing drill. And 2 balls go in, and 3 balls go in, and 4 balls go in. And but at the end, you spoke about you had good old hands, but you had 2 slow hands. And the mad fella from Feagle got at you and he hounded you and drove you cuckoo. But you also spoke about going to the alleys and going to the wall and improving that. And the question really is about honesty for the player. That, you know, you obviously looked at yourself and realised he was right because you took action and you've done something about it. And really just the question is about the importance of players being honest about themselves and listening to people who are trying to encourage them to be better and to achieve whatever they can be.
Well, yeah, that was down in Crokes, I think, was it? Yeah. Yeah, that, I suppose. Look, Nan did do that. We were just playing inter-county senior hurling at an intermediate level. That's what we were doing. We were all able to strike the ball like tip lads. We were all able to catch the ball like tip lads, but they were just doing it that bit quicker. And I think he recognised that and worked on that for us. And I think, you know, we did, like, funny enough, I had no car to the bank, give me a car after we won the first All Ireland, and taking her back off us now, but Fitzy always had a car, Daly Fitz. He was working for a fella called Trixie Toomey, a great character down there in Clare, would have played in goal for Clare Hurlers for North Morrison. Now he's a great fella. He was our minor manager when we were minor. Fitzy be 2 years younger than me, but he had a car and I had no car. But every Saturday morning he was called up, he's from 6 Mile Bridge obviously, called up for me and we'd go to Flannan's and we'd spend maybe 2.5 hours, the two of us. This was around 90, 91. And he was just a lunatic, like he wouldn't stop. Like Fitzy, I have enough, my hands are bleeding. Like, no, I don't have a few minutes. Is that what you said? There's a few fucks in there, like somewhere. But no, like he was driven and I suppose still driven, and it's gas. Like I suppose he'd have a different demeanour than Jim, yet they're both the All-Ireland winning managers. I mean, there's no real definite way of doing it either, but one of the things with Fitzy is I think this year he really kind of calmed it down a fair bit and it rolled off on everybody, you know, a fair bit now, still having up there. But yeah, I think, and funny enough what you said there, Paudie and myself were just talking before we came in and I was just saying to him one of the differences was from 2012 to last year now, we're in 14 now, so I'm nearly scared to talk about anything in the past, but I suppose it would have been very easy to walk away for us after 2012. Below Ennis, it was a bad night and we should have won the game and we didn't. And it was debating whether we'd stay on, and I wanted the players to have an influence on that because if you're not wanted, we've seen enough of that around the country I think over the few years that really if you're not wanted you really need to move on. I think now we're dealing with a different type of player now that if really you're not wanted I think you're as well off to step aside. So we asked them to have a meeting and we got in a private facilitator who knew nothing about hurling or sport nearly, for that matter, just to keep the meeting on track. Because, you know, otherwise it'd be a meeting that lads who didn't get a game during the year would be kind of, well, I'm sick of this crowd. So he kept them going on the issues. And one of the strongest issues that came back from them was that they weren't given enough responsibility to do their weights, to do their wall work as we call it now. One of the best wall sessions we ever had, Paudie ironically took it in Castlebar. Just by chance we met. There was a plume in the sky and we couldn't fly to Portugal for a training camp, so we wound up meeting your man and talk about things happening for a reason over in Castlebar. But they asked, like, we used to go into Aviva to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning in 2012. We never trained as hard collectively in any year that I've been with the lads now. We're facing into our 6th year as 2012, which possibly was our worst year, you know. And last year they asked, could we do less collective stuff maybe when we're together, go a bit longer if we wanted, but they'd have more time to themselves and to trust them. And I suppose no coincidence, maybe we did have a better year. And so, yeah, look, Jim said it at the start that it's about empowering guys now to think for themselves, to express themselves, to you know, one of my favourite phrases, the one I'd use most often, and the boys could tell you, like, it would be cut loose, like, you know, absolutely cut loose, be yourself. It doesn't matter whether it's the Walsh Cup, which is meant to be on tonight, but is off now till Tuesday night in case any of you are travelling up to Ireland. But to cut loose, no matter how big the day is, to go in, take a chance, feel free. I will never knock a fella for hitting a wide, barely hitting it from the corner flag, indulging himself. Do you know? If it's a reasonable chance, by God, go for it and drive it wide. You know, and I think that all stemmed back into maybe me being a bit of a control freak, maybe wanting to see him in the gym. And yet, having now to realise I'm dealing with a different bunch of guys than I did 5 years ago, because they've grown up and matured. And being honest, a lot of the guys who wouldn't go to the gym or wouldn't do their work are gone for that reason, because they were being left behind because they wouldn't work hard enough.
Yeah, we'll keep it going.
No, just ask another question, that's all.
Yeah.
How you going? This is for Anthony and Jim. If there was another player from outside of Dublin, who would you bring in to strengthen your squad?
I can't tell lies in it because I was talking to the lads here at the counter, and I said everybody'd say Joe Kenning, do you know, and I don't get me wrong, I like to have Joe as well. A fella I think I'd love to have, and I only demonstrated again last Sunday morning. We played him in a challenge match up in the Fenia. We played Lockheed Shamrocks. Is Liam Watson from Lockheed. I think is a absolutely fantastic lunatic who will try anything. I mean, he took this dipper of a free on Gary Maguire and it hit the bar from about 40 yards. They needed a goal. We were 9 or 10 ahead, so Watson probably was being told from the sideline by Jim Nelson to pop it over the bar, but he was having it, and he hit this thing, you know, these top spin, and he's the best I've ever seen at it, about 2 foot over the bar, and Gary is saying, oh, that's a point. The next thing, this thing dips, and it hit the bar and came out, and they wound up fighting, the two of them. Watson followed in, and Gary himself had a bit of a set too, and they know each other well, but it's just what he has, I think. I mean, he won an All-Ireland club. I'm not taking away from everybody else in Lockheed. They're a brilliant club, and they'll have a big say in it again, and that's 3 years in a row, because remember, Thomases were very lucky to get a draw with him last year to get into the final. So, but he has that something extra special. I'd love to get him in a kind of a control. He won't, I don't know what it is, John, maybe he won't really put it in for Antrim as much, you know, but he for Lockheed, he's such an exciting player to watch. I'd love to have him.
Yeah, on the football side, I think we all saw you know, Colin Cooper last year, and you know, he's an incredible player. Technically, beautiful balance off both feet, off both hands. Great evasive skills, great point taker, great passer, great catcher. You know, physically, he's a big man, great pace. Tactically, he's got great game intelligence, and we saw the way he picked our pocket and our defensive pocket there last year. And you know, mentally, he's very strong, and he's shown that down through the years. So for me, Colin Cooper will be a big addition, and might get him up in the banks up here. Will be a big help. But he's one of the best.
How about you, John?
Well, I would agree with you. He's revered up north. And it's the one jersey that's still worn by many of the young fellas, the greats. It's didn't want to be because he just has it all. The problem with Liam Watson is the north is still very parochial, and the club is first. That's probably why a lot of the counties, until recent times, didn't win, and they're very clownish. And Antrim itself, there's 3 counties in Antrim. I'm not going into that because it was the Townies and Belfast, the McCurries, and then the Rednecks and the Whirling. But the beautiful thing about the Whirling in Antrim is, and Ballycastle, I'm sure you've been up, it's fascinating. They actually call it the armed resistance. You know the case why. You go into either of those, and there's always fellas at the main road, and at the hurls firing a slit across the road. And the cars literally have to dodge them. They just won't move, they just love their world. And he loves it. Lockheed and their accents, they'll be a bed check.
we, as I said, we played him last Sunday morning, and Jim, I would know Jim for years, Jim Nelson, a bit of a Clare fan in the background, and I would have got to know him, and he obviously would have trained that Antrim team to get to the final in '89 against Tip, beat Offaly, but Sunday morning then it was cold, but it was dry, and I had an orange Adidas t-shirt on, and I was putting on my new AIG coat. You'd be shot if you hadn't done. You weren't seeing AIG. Vodafone. Hello. O2 now. But Nelson, it hasn't been that well, Jim, there, and but we were having a chat outside, and I was zipping up the jacket, and I said, "How are you going, Jim?" And he knew we had played in a piercing play before. "Jesus, Anthony, zip up the jacket quick." He says, "If the boys see you in the t-shirt, they'll be burying you in glass never."
A great crowd.
There's a stipulation every time the two lads talk in public, they have to mention AIG at least once. Okay, we'll keep it going. Down here in the front.
This is for Anthony again. After the drawn match against the Penny, what did you do to get that little extra out of the team to win the next week?
Again, I'd say I had very little to do with it. I got into the car and came home from Portlaoise and stopped in Clarecastle for a pint, which is my want always. I find it hard to get past home. And Clare were after me beat 8 pints by Cork in the Gaelic grounds. And talk about doom and gloom and powers in Clarecastle, I never saw the likes of it. I was the only one kind of half. Took it like. And I remember going into the toilet, and you know the way, sorry no ladies, but some fella appeared beside me, and I knew him. "Well, Chris, well, Dela." Jesus, we were cat. He says, talking about Clare. "I heard, no, I didn't see it." I said, "Watch it tomorrow there, I have a tape outside at home." "And Jesus, ye blew it as well," he said. I just thought, like, I can't bring this back up with me on Tuesday anyway. We did very little. I think the boys themselves, you couldn't underestimate what drawing with Kilkenny in a championship match would do for that confidence. Like, I mean, the previous year we'd been hockeyed by them down there, and I remember back into the dressing room, I had nothing to say, to be honest, and you were supposed to be a leader at that point in time. I was trying to sum up something to think of to lift it, and I knew it would be probably a bit false if I did, and for once in my life I thought, let it be, let the silence linger, and maybe let fellas feel it. But Dotsy was sitting beside me, and I said to him, "Why is it Dots?" And he says, "Just can't beat those. It's just them," he says. And even drawing with them that day, do you know, like, you could sense Tuesday night that the boys, I said, "Lads," and I don't even think we played that well. I sat down and watched it yesterday. I says, "We're a lot better than we played. There's more in us." I said, "We might have said we lost our chance. People will tell us that. I think Charlie Hawley was the teacher the last time they lost the replay." So everyone said, "We're gone," like, and they'll believe that as well. No matter what Cody says, they'll believe that. So I said, if we can play a bit better, I think we'll win. And really, I think they didn't actually believe it again until half-time in the replay. And absolutely at half-time, that dressing room was on fire at half-time in the replay. They just said, they were roaring at each other. "Do you believe it now?" They were roaring. And again, I hardly got a word in, only to try and calm them down before they got back out to try and say, "Look, it's about this little white thing here, lads. It's all the one now, what aggression we feel now. We've got to get to the ball and keep our plan and keep what we're doing." But really, they did it themselves, I suppose. And it comes a time for every team where they probably have to try and say, "This crowd going to be beating us all our lives, or we give it up." And even going back to my time with Clare, like going down to the Munster final in '95, having been hockeyed in the '93 and '94 Munster finals, I wasn't going to play anymore in my own mind if we lost that one. I just wasn't. I was 25, but I wasn't going to play anymore. I just couldn't ache that crack anymore. Coming home and everyone looking at you in the pub and going out, turning their back on you, really. Like, and that was the way it was. Like, Loughnane used to sing Waltz and Matilda as his party piece. The odd time you get to give the party piece, and he stopped up early in '95. We were down on a bit of a training weekend in Killarney, but we were allowed to have a few pints on a Saturday night, which turned into a good few pints, and he had a few as well. And we got him to sing, but of course he nearly had it all planned out. And the line in Waltz and Matilda, where your man comes back from the war, when they went off to the war, they were all flag waving and cheering, you know, that's as the ship pulled away from Circular Quay. But he came back and he lost both his legs in the war, obviously, with a big Turkish shell as the line. And Loughnane stopped in the middle of the song, and your man is coming down the gangway without his legs. And he says, and remember, and the line in the song, Tommy make him better at it than me now, is, and they turned all their faces away. And that's the way we felt. Every time we came back to Clarecastle, they turned away like, chuckers and big day chokers. And you know, for that Dublin team, I believe that was the kind of Camadadra moment, if you want. Like, it was half-time in Portlaoise. We're ahead again, it's the replay. We either step up to the plate now or don't. And yes, we just want to be competitive up. We don't want to be competitive up. I know yourself, buddy. You still like to be winning the odd time. Oh, that, the waltz of Matilda.
Anthony, I think, you okay time-wise? Whenever you have to skip away, I think you're free to go. Yeah. Yeah, down here in the front.
Yeah, just as excuse me, Paudie, but as 4 very successful coaches and managers with 4 different personalities and histories, what do you think is that little bit different, that little bit of an X factor that you bring or can bring or have brought to your team that makes you different to the rest of the coaches that you've come across?
Well, from my working with the Dublin senior football team, or say my 6 years with the 21s, we always tell them to be the best they can be on any given day. And the same message I gave out in 2003 when I was involved with the 21s, with the same message that I gave out last year to the senior team. And if that's good enough for the day, you know, you'll come away to silverware. And if you're beaten by a better team, you just put your hand up and say well done. And that's the philosophy we've always taken with them. And I think that's the best way you get the most of it. Of course, you've got to give them that self-esteem, that self-confidence. You've got to set targets, you've got to set KPIs, all that good stuff, and give them a structure to play within. But my firm belief is that if you allow the players really go at it, and as Anthony has that phrase, giving it a cut, that's the best. And if that's good enough to win, that's great. And that's why, you know, I would think that the players, you know, against Kerry, Anthony broke it for me, against Mayo in the final when they got such a good start, against Kerry when they got such a good start, against Meath when they got such a good start, against Kildare when they got such a good start. Players knew that, you know, it was to play with the expanse of the game, and just to give it their all. It wasn't just about playing the first 10-15 minutes. Half time is only a break and play. So to be the best they can be, and if that's good enough for the day, you know, you come away with the silverware.
I think that very few people ever have taken on a football team and brought the Sam Maguire back in the first year. And Jim, what you've achieved, those lads, have been absolutely astonishing. And I know that lots of them had come through sort of in the under 21 and everything else, but it was an amazing achievement. Know you're a very humble man, great player, but what you got those lads to do was way above and beyond what people would have expected. And I think the big thing that more than anything else was being allowed to express themselves. And that's what I said to you outside earlier. The team this year was so exciting to watch. Now everybody else, because we've come through quite a negative patch really, of lots of, you know, terribly defensive, even in our thinking, you know what I mean? Like afraid to play, and there's nothing worse than that. And what Dublin have done for Gaelic this year, or what Dublin and Kerry did in that All-Ireland semi-final, was it had the country talking about it. It was been shown all over the place, and rightly so, because it was an expression that everybody would aspire to and everybody would love to see happening. And if I was starting all over again, I'd love to think I'd have the courage to have a go like that, because it was really brilliant. Well done, Jim. Fair play.
It's very simple. Coaches were players themselves usually, and managers, so they love just to play. As Jim said, to give them the expression. But the one thing I've learned all over the years, despite what all the qualities we all bring, my own goal rule is that quite quickly I put it down to coaches here that players don't care what you know till they know you care. And that goes right to the last sub. For me, the measure of a team is how the last sub, number 30, is treated. And if he feels involved, he has an opinion, he's respected, he's getting enjoyment, he's improving, that goes right through the whole team. And that's real camaraderie, how number 30 is.
Paudie? If you feel like it.
Yeah. I got a commission to focus last week on children's sport up to 12, and today again the same thing. I looked after Tipperary minors 21s and Laois seniors, and now I'm with Wexford seniors. I mean, I know what competitive sport is about, but what I'm telling you all, it's about 2% of the people. And we could never take our sight up to 28. And if Anthony doesn't have more people hurling in Dublin, it doesn't matter how good he is, if the base isn't there. And the same with Jim, and the same with the lads. So it's crucial that we get the child section right. It's equally crucial that we get the youth section right. And then when we have a really broad base, the pyramid will be so high. And there's lots of professional sports see our sports and they just are amazed. How can our players be so fit? How can they be so enthusiastic? And how can they play for nothing? And our games this year in hurling and football are world class. We can say that with our hand on our heart. So it's a phenomenal year. So you take a boy of 20 like Jack McCaffrey, or say somebody who was 30, really, really good work went on 10 years ago and 20 years ago. They don't come from nowhere to the top of the tree. So good work is always going on. What I want is, my mission in life is that every child get good coaching and that every child in Ireland gets a chance to play Gaelic games. That's reasonable, isn't it? Now everybody doesn't get a chance. And we really, we're going well enough, but there's always room for improvement. And the lads talk to the player about being the best they can be, and I'm talking about the association being the best it can be. And that's what we're about today, the association being the best it can be in its units. And in certain areas, in my little parish, 100% of the people play Gaelic games. That's our parish. That's not possible in some of the big urban areas, but there's room for improvement. I did a big survey of some towns the other day, and one town had 50% of the children are in the clubs in the parish, and another in a big area, 18% of the children in the schools are in GA clubs. Now, there's room for improvement there. So we're on totally different missions. They're at the peak of the pyramid, and I'm at the base of the pyramid. And they haven't that much to do with each other in a one way, but they have a lot to do with each other in the long term. So if you can invite a little boy of 7 or a girl of 7 into the picture, and in 16 or 20 years' time they're on a county team, that's fine. But I'm also concerned for all the other children that are never going to be. And think of all the children, or the young lads now that we rear, that are out in Sydney or out in Chicago or down in Buenos Aires, who are now playing our Gaelic games. We have 500 clubs now outside of Ireland. Absolutely viable now. Last year at the American Youth Games, 5,000 young American children played in their equivalent of the Féile. They're not Irish children, they're American children, 5,000. Could I tell you the story for a second? Be okay? I had the privilege of going to Seattle. A person out there called Terry Lynch was parents, his ancestors left Antrim in 1847. And he has never been to Ireland, and his wife is from the Netherlands and his children. But anyway, he got one day saw a slitter flying through the air in the park and got addicted to hurling. So anyway, he's a trained tutor now in our Gaelic games. There's 20 tutors now trained in the States, and there'll be 40, and there'll be 60, and there'll be 100, and so on. But anyway, I went over this year to give Seattle a hand, or so I thought. So we went up to high school called Skyline High School, 3,000 children up in Seattle. And every American school now has to take an indigenous sport on their PE program. So this school picked Gaelic games as their indigenous sport of another country. It's part of their new education system. They play the baseball and they play the American football, but they must do one indigenous sport. So they picked Gaelic games. So I was asked over anyway. Terry Lynch was my connection, and we went off. One young lad was working in Boylan. He worked his shift all the night so he could help Terry in the morning. So he worked 14-hour shift in the night to come off his shift at 10 in the morning so he could help Terry. So 4 volunteers came in to help him, and he's a volunteer. He's an attorney at law, a brilliant man. So we ended up anyway, and it was a change in shift. So there was a new class coming who had never seen a hurling or never heard of Ireland before, except one boy had heard of Ireland. The rest of them were absolutely Europeans from every part of the world, or Americans with European ancestry from every part of the world. And so there's 32 children come out, and as they passed, the PE teacher was there handing each boy a hurley. And we went out in the field, and Terry had his 4 trainers out. One, you're on the roll lift, you're on the catch, you're on the strike, and you're on the block. They got 2 minutes at each station, 2 minutes. And I said, Terry, you can't do this. I said, this will be all blood. I said, I'm doing this, he said. So they got the 2 minutes whistle went and moved on. They all got four 2-minute sessions, and then the match started. 2 matches, 8 against 8 on this pitch, AstroTurf pitches, and 8 against 8. The score in this match was 7 goals to 8, and the score in that match was 5 goals to 6. So I called in the boys and I said to them, what do you think? And every one of them said, this is the sport, the best sport we ever played. This is the most exciting thing we ever did. There was soloing, there was catching, there was striking, there was blocking, and there was continuous play. There was no stopping the play whatever. And they said it's the best thing they ever did in their lives. So they went in, the siren went, and they all went in, and the next thing, 32 more came out, half boys and half girls. Same story, 2-2-2. So I knew what the boys would say, but I called over the girls and said, what is this? This is awesome, they said. What country does this come? What's this thing called? Right, they had the best time of their life and had no idea, on the big prologue we have, the big years of messing around, introducing hurling to people when they were able to play a viable game with 8 minutes of practice. So I went over to America to teach. The truth was I went over to America to learn. And I learned the biggest lesson of my life. So if that's any help to anybody to give you confidence in the future. The kids now are smart, they're intelligent, they're watching television since the day they're born, they're full of ideas, they're way more awake than we were. They're way ahead of what we were in our time. Would that be fair, people? Yeah. Thank you very much.
That's the quote of 2014 so far for me. I was asked to go to Seattle to give a hand. I'm also been asked to go to Scariff to give a hand.
Right,
it's funny, early, Dermot, sorry, early on, Anthony was talking about Jimmy Gray, and Jimmy presented the Leinster Cup and so on. Jimmy got married, he married a girl from America, and they came back off the honeymoon. He was working with Aer Lingus at the time, and all the engineering and all the maintenance and everything else was done in Amsterdam in the early days, and Jimmy was in charge. So he was coming home on the night flight back into Manchester, back into Dublin on a Friday night in around 9:30. And on the Saturday, Dublin decided, because that they were going up to play Antrim, they had to win a National League match. So Jimmy has got married, he's just moved into a new house. The gardens are upside down. This one was never at a Gaelic match in her life, and he's going off and he's going up to Antrim, and he's bitching going up on the train, giving out about it. And they went up, and of course the train got delayed, and he was late back, and just in time to get the plane to go off without seeing the wife at all. And the next morning in Clontarf, 2 tractors pull up. One was a rollavator and the other was a load of topsoil. And the 2 men the man in the front had a cap turned back to front, and he sees this man called Declan Brennan walking on the side on the road, and Declan's working with the Department of Education at the time, and he said, excuse me, he said, is there a little bollocks called Gray lives around here? I beg your pardon? Is there a little bollocks called Gray lives around here? He's moved into a new house. And a discussion took place anyhow. And it was Lara Foley was on the front tractor, and Des Light of Heaven and the two of them was on the second. Two All-Ireland medal winners with Dublin, 63 and 58. And not only that, played in All-Ireland hurling final as well. And when Jimmy Gray came home on the Friday night, the garden was done, because not only was it rotated, the lawn was sown and so on. And I suppose the point I want to make more than anything else is that camaraderie that is there with lots of the lads who were never paid. How someone's in a spot of bother, and the men are sure that they're helping each other out. And that's the thing, I suppose, that's synonymous more than anything else. And I know, only speaking for myself, an honour for me to be here tonight, a pleasure to be here. That's the same with anybody who's asked to go to Seattle. They don't mind going either, you know?
We're going, as I was going to say, we're going to wrap it up in a few minutes, so if you could maybe avoid asking Paudie and Sean any questions, we might get a couple more questions. Yeah?
Just a twofold question. I asked Jim the first question. Dublin created, double-digit goal chances in a lot of games last year. Was there any concern that they didn't convert a lot of them? My own emotions were, Jesus, it's great. Look at all the goal chances they're creating. I wish they'd fucking convert a few of these so we'd relax in the second half. Do you know what I mean? And perhaps the lads might tell us what their favourite score last season was.
It was part of the game plan was to create those opportunities. So from the coaching perspective, that was great to see, and the players did everything in their in terms of implementing the game plan. Naturally enough, you'd like to see the conversion rate higher, but I think we had the highest scoring average in the National League, same with the Championship as well. We were well up there. So from my perspective, any time at half time, we wouldn't berate a player for taking a shot on. I mean, we have lots of work to do this year with the players. We have lots of lessons learned from last year, and that's one of the areas that you highlighted. And one of the drills that John showed you on there, something that we were working with them as well to improve their finishing. But for me, the most important thing last year was that the opportunities were being created, and nobody was taking shots to, as Anthony would have said, for their own motivational purpose or for their own ego. It's if the shot was on, we encourage them to take it. So, but it is an area that we do need to improve.
So score of the year for each of them, was that the second part of it?
Score of the year for me would have been probably the Ireland final. Dennis Bastic passed to Bernard. That's a play that we had that we've practiced many times on the in terms of creating chances, and sometimes earlier on this season, guys might have taken the wrong option in a game. So to see that happen in the heat of battle, in a very pressurised situation, and I mean, it looks so simple, but there was hours and hours of work put into that one particular move. So that was probably most satisfying for me.
If we could just hold on that for 1 second, Jim. When we chat about this downstairs, you're talking about a freedom to express yourself, and it's almost, when you look in from the outside, as if the Dublin lads just go out and they do whatever they're going to do, and everyone just rolls with punches or whatever. But it's combined. It's definitely there's a very severe balance there, for want of a better phrase, between roles and training session drills and methods to create the chances where you can actually be expressive, as opposed to just go out there, lads, and enjoy yourself, and also just crushing lads with just doing drills.
Yeah, there's a definite game plan that sits beneath it all, and there's certain drills and exercises that we do in the training field, and I call it organised freedom. So there's a very set patterns, and there's patterns of play and plays that the guys would conduct in a game that it looks like it's chaotic, but that's from the coaching staff and for the players, they understand the structure that's in it. So there is very definite plays within the game, but as I said, we like to call it organised freedom, where guys can step in and step out of different positions, and that's probably all I'd say on that one.
You only give too much away. And pass on to the lads.
Well, I've scored in the last 2 years with the same lad as Master McMahon and your son. I don't know why he starts or not, but he is just... he's an artist with it. Every day he gets a ball, I will turn around even to me 2 strings because we always watch the games together and said, right, he's going for something. The very fact that he said, I always aim for the crossbar, he didn't realise, but if you do aim for the crossbar, you end up with a 60-degree angle, and it's always a different. His goal the year before, London ground, class. We just link him up north, because there's that raw aggression and he's a fear of nothing, he just goes for it. I'm glad you give him freedom of expression. But I always see in his age coming on, Jim, you kept me on the bench, I enjoy you.
Well, just on that, I was mentioning earlier on about players who are 1 to 15. If I had my way, I'd name the team alphabetically, because we don't place any emphasis on the start of 15. In fact, what's probably more important is the team that finishes the game, because that's the team that sees you through, at the league level, through the finish line. As I said before, half time for us, it's only a break to play, so it doesn't matter whether we're 10 up or 10 down. What's most important is when the referee blows the final whistle. So when you're coaching the kids and your teams, don't hammer into them about the start of 15. It's called a team sport for that reason. It's a team. So the guy who's number 20 on his back, we don't even refer to him as a number, but if he has that number on his back, is as important as the guy with number 2. So try and get out of that philosophy when you're starting the start of 15. It's much more than that. And for their self-esteem, for their ego, for them to be able to express themselves, like Matt coming into the game, he understands that. It's not he doesn't go on the field and play with 19 in his back. He has a particular job to do for the team, and that's how he expresses himself.
I would just say on that really quickly, and not to be preachy on it, as a teacher, when you coach kids, I think you can coach adults and tell them that 15 to 13 matter every bit as much and almost fool them a little bit easier. They're kind of just there doing their thing. Kids actually hear the language underneath what you're saying. So if you don't fully believe that, and I mean fully, absolutely having immersed yourself in believing that number 30 is as important as number 15, it's no point in saying it. They'll see that play out through a lot of interactions during a session, and that's just something I guess I've learned as a teacher. Dalo, favourite score of the year?
The favourite score was Danny Sutcliffe's goal against Kilkenny. The most important one was Eamon Dillon's down on Wexford Park, though, because we were constipated about Mark Shute dropping the hurley. Oh, I'm sure he wasn't pulled up on it, sure. You know yourself. You got a roll with it. But we would have trouble scoring goals, and nearly the harder you work on it, the less chances. But I said earlier on, cut loose would be my favourite statement, but the thing I've said the most, I'd say, is I came up here, well, to the forwards anyway, is low. They can mimic it now perfectly, but the amount of times that we have lads taking on, I know we all like to stick it in past the goalie's ear into the roof of the net. That's a mighty one, Paudie. Jesus, there was a simple goal against Knockeel, the ball Ryan O'Dwyer pulled it back across the square, and jockey Adam McGreel there from Crumlin, just a little flick from about 14 yards. It wasn't even powerfully struck into the corner, and the lads were on about Watson shot, hitting the bar afterwards in the dressing room, that Gary didn't see it. And Jockey was there, and I said, Jockey, it was worth 3 pints if it went in, wasn't it? Same as yours. And in the Fenia that day, they had a hurling wall, like you have out here on their Astro, and what I liked about it was, the little targets for the pints, 30 pints, 20 pints, 10 pints. Down the bottom corner, they had the 30 pint one. I said, someone is listening. But that's normally up in the top corner. I see it in a lot of places, so that's goal scoring. A poor low shot has a great chance of going in. But sometimes, Kevin McMiniman's one this year, probably, I don't know, what was he going for it? I thought he should have gone for his pint now, it was me, but he has that knack, I suppose. But I just think the one he scored a couple of years ago was a really low. I mean, that's the kind of one in hurling anyway. Even the best of keepers have trouble with a low one, and if you remember that goal against Kilkenny Sutcliffe, it was a crowd of players. Dotsy was almost after getting it in, and someone flicked it off the line, and it came out to him, but he kept it low, and it beat them all into the far corner. He could tell you himself it wasn't even his best shot, so They're the ones low.
It was a spectacular year in hurling and football for goals, way up on the number that we normally expect. So there's thousands of goals this year. Jack Guiney's goal, I suppose, in Wexford and both against Clare again were spectacular goals. Conor Lehan's goal for Cork. But I think for myself, I think it's Conor McGrath's goal in the end of that. I think it's just an epic and a classic part of hurling. It was on. He looked up at me, saw it. The goalie saw it, and still he did it. So there was nobody fooled. It was just a pure case of. The way I see it now about hurling, it's about hundreds of seconds. Hurling in the 60s was about seconds. Hurling in Anthony's time was about tenths of seconds. The way it is now, it's about hundreds of seconds. Anything that happens sets up a goal or closes off a goal in a hundredth of a second. So people that played before are talking about things that are way gone out of their time. It's a new time. And you know the great goal he scored there when your midfielder dived and put himself out and tore himself apart to get his hand to a ball. Yeah, that's hundreds of seconds. It's just no time. But still it decides the whole thing. It's a fantastic era for Gaelic games. They're standing up on their own feet and as a spectacular, and anybody that watches Sky, there's really nothing now to match our Gaelic games now. In the clear light of the day. Not because we're from, but they're spectacular. And I think 16 points or 17 points in a football match deserves 3 goals. And I think 20 points in a hurling match needs 3 goals to balance itself and keep the spectacular nature of both sports.
Sean, to finish off?
The two, what Jim mentioned and what Paudie mentioned, they're my 2 goals of the year. Absolutely unbelievable. And I'd have to say that probably the match against Kerry, one of the highlights for me would have been Stephen Cluxton's kick out at the end. It changed the course of history. No question. It was absolutely amazing because, let's face it, shots are gone by him during the day. Things that he would have normally done with his eyes closed didn't work out, but he never lost his attention, he never lost where he was, he never lost his presence, he never lost command, and he still believed in himself. And how he got the ball to where he got it, just ask him also, Shay.
Lads, there could be 1,000 more there could be 1,000 more questions and it could go on. We want to let the lads go. I would say that these guys are talking in public quite often and a much similar message. I know sometimes they feed the media a certain line and it's a little bit bland at times because you just want to get them out of their face. I have the experience of that. But for the most part, they're talking about the very same thing. These hints, clues, topics are all in there if you want them, if you really listen to what they're saying when they're in the public view. For me, an absolute pleasure to be here, delighted to be asked here, delighted to be up here with the 5 of these absolutely amazing men. I'm hoping now it'll be easier to get an interview out of a couple of them. News Talk will have broken that border down. But yeah, look, thanks very much. All the questions, fantastically insightful, well thought out. Genuine, obviously a genuine club just trying to develop, and that's the chance that you all have, and everyone has that. We all do it in our clubs as well. So thanks very much, and we'll finish that.